President Muhammadu Buhari has instituted a probe into last week's shooting incident at the State House in Abuja, a situation which has thrown First Lady Aisha Buhari into public focus one more time, just a few months after she was also involved in another melee at the villa. For the security implication of this trend of events, as well as a new wave of offensive from Boko Haram and other non-state actors in the northeastern part of Nigeria, we are now being joined by Col Hassan Stan-Labo, a retired military intelligence officer, security analyst and consultant, as well as a defense strategist. Col Hassan Stan-Labo is the chief executive officer of security consulting firm Hacks and Partners. Welcome to the program, Colonel. Good morning.
Thank you, Abati. Thank you, Ruben.
Good morning. Good to have you again on the morning show. Well, I mean, you must have had the introduction that I tried to give, which is around the shooting incident that occurred at the villa last week, Thursday, with the security details of the First Lady and the security details of a presidential aide shooting, and the Inspector General of Police had to wade in and make some arrests. That has been in the news, and with the First Lady even saying that the IG should release our own aides that had been arrested. Is this a usual thing for the presidential villa to be turned into a place where aides turn the guns on themselves?
Thank you, Doc. I must be frank with you, I received that news with so much shock. I received that news with so much shock because having served in the villa as a presidential guards officer, I know what such a thing would do as to creating all sorts of alerts all over the place. You could imagine how many alert buttons that could lead to, being pressed instantly. It's so disturbing to understand that a trained officer, just at the mere skirmish, family skirmish, so to speak, will begin to squeeze the trigger. Over what? I am more concerned with the security implications of that. I am not trying to look at the other aspect of the issue, that is to say why did the gentleman not go into isolation or so. My concern is the security implications of a trained police officer squeezing the trigger over a petty issue as that. It's unfortunate. I expect the IG to take serious steps in seeing that the officer is immediately, booked, all right, and he goes through his orderly room procedure. If it were in the military, definitely he is likely to face a court-martial, and I'm afraid he might see himself out of service. It's a very grievous offense. The security of the first family and the commander-in-chief himself is of utmost importance to us all as a nation. President Buhari and his family ceases to be private property. They are now public entity. Their safety, their health conditions, and what have you, matters to every Nigerian, because that is our number one citizen and the number one family. What if that gunshot had probably mistakenly hit the First Lady or any member of the First Family? We wouldn't be discussing what we are discussing here. Besides that, what if that gunshot is being misinterpreted in certain quarters within the general villa environment to mean probably an attack on the presidency, and people begin to react and position themselves? The consequences could be far greater than that. I want to leave it to our imaginations. Okay? I think, Ruben, let me just leave it at that.
Thank you, sir, for even outlining, as far as you did, just the gravity of the situation. It's important to underscore this so that such a thing never repeats itself. Now, you talked about disciplinary procedures against those who were arrested and charged by the Inspector General of Police. But is the I was following orders line, would that be a defense? Because depending on what newspaper reports you read, some will report that those who fired the gunshots were following orders of the First Lady or acting on her behalf, and others would say that it was the DSS attached to the president's PA that, fired those bullets. So following orders, is that a defense in this sort of situation? Or are those gentlemen who are currently in custody, the ADC and other security officers, are they going to take the fall for those who gave them the orders?
Thank you, Abiola, but let me just ask this. Following whose orders? Where is your sense of initiative as an officer? Why are you an officer? You're not an NCO. You're not a foot soldier. You're an officer. If the First Lady is giving you the wrong orders, you will accept it? Your loyalty is to the Commander-in-Chief. Okay? You know what, you should be able to apply some initiative in what you do. So if the First Lady had asked you, shoot the president, you will shoot him? Oh, your initiative will come to play then? We must know the sort of orders we take. It is important. You must know what orders to take and what orders to turn and say, man, I think we shouldn't do this way. And you advise her. All right? Do not forget that, look, she is at that point seeing herself as Mrs. Buhari, not the wife of the president. So as far as she's concerned, she is desperately interested in maybe shielding her husband away from harm. You are not supposed to be carried away by whatever psychological implications that will bring into bear. You should be seen beyond that. Okay? I expect you to allow your pistol remain in its pouch and you appeal to the gentleman to please go on isolation or please leave the place. You can see Madam is boiling. Why not just leave for a while? You could always come back. These are the sort of interventions I see you do. Okay? I mean, we've all been ADCs, and we know the sort of orders we take at times. When the boss is boiling, you chip in one or two words to him. Rankedede, let's take it easy, sir. The man might blame me at that point that you didn't take his instructions, but later on, he will see the wisdom in which you, small man, was able to give that advice.
Okay, I want to come in here. I want to talk about one thing you don't want to talk about. I know you're a defense and security analyst, but correct me if I'm wrong, sir. The First Lady, does she have a constitutional role to start with? Secondly, does the role involve enforcement? Thirdly, who enforces the presidential COVID guideline?
Well, if you're asking if she's got a constitutional role, I would want to ask, is her position recognized by the Constitution? If it is recognized by the Constitution, then I expect that the Constitution will be able to avail certain statutory roles for her to play. If the Constitution only sees her as just the wife of the president, be there, take care of the president, nurse him, make sure he feels all right, and so on, that is already defined. The Constitution does not even have to say anything about that. But I expect that the First Lady is supposed to be, that office is supposed to be recognized by the Constitution and avail certain statutory functions, okay, within which she's able to exercise and, have a sense of belonging to the administration itself, too.
So why should she have the power to even have an aide that can carry a firearm to go out to make an enforcement?
Because she's entitled to some protection. Because the entire First family is entitled to protection. Not just protection, we feed them freely, we take care of their health freely, we give them everything freely, we make sure they are in sound, good condition. It's our responsibility, done from our tax money. We pay the gentleman who is protecting her from our tax money. They mean so much to us until the day they cease to be in that position.
Well, Colonel, let's talk about this wave of insecurity, which seems to become even more pronounced in the face of COVID-19. Professor Ango Abdullahi of the Northern Elders Forum had cause to draw attention to this, but his concern was dismissed as the concern of a mere irritant by a presidential spokesman. But we all know that we've been having cases of banditry attacks, not just from Boko Haram, from the northeastern part, but also within the northwest and also the north central area, and particularly in Katsina. Why is it so difficult to address this challenge of banditry, terrorism, insurgency, herders-farmers conflict, despite the fact that we're told that government has redesigned the national security architecture and that the national security strategy document is in place to provide the necessary guidelines?
Thank you, Ruben. The issue of banditry attacks up north, I think, is no longer a new phenomenon to us all. What is disturbing now to us all is the incessant nature it has assumed now, and more so with the characteristic hallmarks it comes with, you know, the killings, cattle rustling, the burnings, and what have you. And of course, the criminal intent behind some of these things. More disturbing, however, to me, is the fact that the military or the security agencies are not able to are not able to arrest the situation adequately. And of course, we all know it boils down to a high level of incapacitation suffered by these agencies. All right? Besides the issue of manpower, which has been overflowed on the part of the police, and in fact, nearly every security agency in Nigeria today suffers from manpower issue, be it military or paramilitary. Besides the manpower issue, I want us to look at the lack of, multimodal mobility assets, be they helicopters, be they all-terrain vehicles, be they all seasonal vehicles, and so on. We are lacking, or the police is lacking, a great deal in all this. Because they are lacking in all this, which includes all-terrain and all forms of multi-modal vehicles, you discover that there is a situation where, for instance, you have bandits operating in far-flung forests away from the major road. Take Kaduna-Abuja road. Come in with all your tanks on that road, be it 100 APCs and 2,000 soldiers or policemen. If you cannot move in to access these bandits wherever they are, my brother, I can assure you, whatever you are doing will not have any serious impact. And that is why whenever villages that are far-flung, right in the forest, where these guys are operating, whenever they send out SOS messages, it takes time for security agencies to be able to get to the spots. And whenever they get to the spots, already those guys would have completed their operations and even relocate to another fresh area, continue with their havoc. This is the situation we keep facing. Let's keep looking at other kinetic issues with the police. How do we have very good communications amongst the various operating units? Okay? It is important that things like this are addressed. If we can get our acts right, if we can get the right surveillance helicopters that can do some of these jobs, move in there, because the helicopter, of course, has a free-way movement. Move in there, be able to carry out some surveillance, send back information, and these guys can move in if they have the right mobility asset to move in. But when has a nation Reuben, we have failed to get our acts, get our priorities right. That is when you see a nation spending 20-something, 30-something billion in renovating a National Assembly, where that same amount of money can provide well over 15 or 20 surveillance helicopters for the police. Which should come first? The leisure of a fine air-conditioned, National Assembly, or the realities of protecting citizens far in the hinterlands by getting these aircrafts? There we are.
There we are indeed. Thank you for putting it as, bluntly as that. It's a question of priorities and values that we have as a country. Now, what you've suggested as solutions are related to the activities of the federal government. What about the state governors? What should the northern governors be doing? Because they have been criticized in not coming together the way the Southwest governors did with Amotekun. The northern governors have done nothing of that nature. There was a Shege Kefasa movement that tried to emerge and was stamped out swiftly. What should the northern governors be doing? And from what you've described, you're talking about massive investments in equipment and recruiting. Is this beyond the scope of what northern governors can do? Do you lay full responsibility for our security architecture at the federal government level?
Abiola, if I talk about the northern governors here, I'll keep you wondering what is giving this man this sort of boldness. There is no boldness because Nigeria is my country, and nobody has equal rights to Nigeria than myself. I must let you know that the North has constantly suffered from serially failed leadership because of the inept nature of our leadership, especially the governors. Especially the governors. You have governors who there are Almajiri children scattered all over their states. They are busy buying fantastic cars from Japan for government officials. Where does your priority lie? In the North, we have always known this. We are behind educationally. What efforts are our leaders making to ensure that the North is able to bridge the gap educationally? Shall we continue to remain on what you call quota system? When shall we begin to compete? Enough of this quota system. It is making us lazy. Enough of it. We should invest in education. We should invest in health. And what have you? Well, let's leave that aside. Abiola, our fixation on the kinetic solution to our problems, especially as it relates to the banditry issue, okay, has made us to lose sight, I would say, with the humanitarian approach or solutions to our problems. We should by now begin to look at how we can impact on the economic life of the citizenry, okay? I expect governments, when I mean governments, I mean state governments, especially my brothers up north. I expect the governors to begin to see how they can exploit the inherent advantages or inherent potentials, okay, in our economic fundamentals in such areas as agriculture, mining, sports, entertainment. These are areas where some of them you don't even need any form of education. Take the man in. He learns on the job. All right? Because why am I saying this and why have I laid emphasis on some of these areas like sports, entertainment, and so on? I don't need to go to school to know how to run and compete with Ben Johnson. I don't need to go to school. Fine, education is good. But if the man has refused to go to school, what do? You look for other ways of making him useful to himself and society. Why do we not have vocational training centers all over in the North? These are areas where I expect us to lay emphasis. If you want to build a house today, you start looking for people who will lay your what's it called? Your ties from Benin Republic, painter from Togo Republic, your roof from Gambia. And we have Nigerian youths. What are we doing with the teeming unemployed youths in the north? What is the leadership up north doing? These are the things we should be doing. And stop looking up to Buhari every moment. Stop looking up to the federal government every moment. There are enough resources, or there is enough resources at the state level for something tangible to be done. Northern leadership, especially the governors, are just being lazy.
Okay.
They lack the foresight. Okay?
All right. You said we shouldn't look up to the president, but I think it was President Harry Truman of America that said the buck stops here. It still stops with the president. If you listen to the Democracy Day address, the president talked about the fact that we're winning the war against insurgency and banditry. Then we had Katsina. Don't forget Auna. We can go on and on and on. How can, in one breath, we say we are winning the war, and in another breath, we have massive attacks? And they say, oh, it's because the insurgents are running away. Those are soft targets. We've been on this soft target issue for close to 4 years now. What is happening? Are we being honest with ourselves? Is it truly about the governors? We've had some ray of hope. Babagana Zulum is one. Is it truly about the governors?
Just like the buck stops on the president's table, when you look at it at the federal level. At the state level, the buck stops on the governor's table. We shouldn't lose sight of that. Okay? We have discussed why, unfortunately, the deficits inherent in the holding of the security agencies by way of their inventory holding is beginning to tell or impact on their performance in the field. We've got to do something about that. I am highly impressed with what the governors in the West did with the amateur coup thing. And I was shocked and disturbed at the initial stage when my governors up north were instead either opposing or speaking from all sides of their mouth rather than looking inwards and doing something. I have always said it right from the time of, who was the Baba who prevailed over Lagos before Fashola? I've often said it, that right from Tinubu's time down to Fashola's time, if I were a governor in northern Nigeria, I will always peep into Lagos, see what they are doing, dash back to my home and replicate it. Rather than buying the latest Honda cars from Japan every day. You go up north, you see a mud house owned by the grandfather of a governor. There are 10 Japanese cars, all brand new, latest, parked outside. He's busy adjusting his Babariga. Was that what we elected you for?
Well,
look at what the man in Borno is doing. What's his name against Zulum? That is one fine gentleman who I pray we could have governors like that in this country. 1 out of a million. 1 out of a million. Unfortunately, like we are up north, I expect that by now we should be penning that man down as a presidential candidate one day, not 2023. 2023 is not for us, it's for the South.
Well, Colonel,
we should be penning somebody like that down someday because he's got foresight, he's got vision, he has a mission. But unfortunately, like it is, people like that, we don't often give them the chance.
Well,
because he does not have money.
Colonel, well, if I may play the devil's advocate, many of our governors, either in the north or in the south, will insist that they are handicapped when it comes to security matters, because what we have in place is a centralized security architecture. The Inspector General of Police reports directly to the president, and then, of course, you know the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Are you asking for a complete decentralization of the security system in Nigeria, or you think we can still retain the present structure and then blame the governors who may be powerless for failing to ensure security in their states?
I believe in true federalism, I must tell you, Dr. Ruben. It's really unfortunate that till now we have not been able to muster the willpower to go into true federalism. I believe we shall get there someday anyway. Talking about the governors who would always tell you, look, they don't have, what's it called, the security, the powers over security in their state and what have you. How many governors have returned their security vote? That I have no job for this vote, have the 500,000 back. Or 300,000, and now they are even the ones that now fix it. There is no statutory, what's it called, provision as to the amount. So you just jump up and fix what you think is appropriate for you as security vote. How many have turned it back? Now, when you've not turned it back, you are telling me you are using it. So what are you using it on? You cannot be telling me you have no role to play, yet the resources, financial resources given to you, you pocket it.
Indeed, sir. We can't pass the buck. What is the role of organizations like the Northern Elders Forum? Obviously, the president's spokesperson will have you believe that they have no role whatsoever and that they're political, but do they have a role? And what about Northern traditional rulers? Does their voice still count?
I have always said this. In reordering our security architecture, if I may borrow from Dr. Abati, I think we have always at times left out some layers that would have been able to play some role. Part of the problems we have today, for instance, with banditry, I would say, is because we have overlooked some key individuals at the grassroots level, right there in the villages. Who are these guys I'm referring to? We have a lot of trained hands, retirees from the services, Army, Air Force, Navy, DSS, police, what have you, who are now retired and living in their villages. They have gone back home. Fine. In that old age state or condition, they can still be of use. I'm not just talking theory. I have practicalized it when I was overseeing an operation as a commander way back in Akwa Ibom as a bloody major. I used most of these guys on ground. They would just tie their wrappers and sit outside there. They gather every information you are looking for. If only you have the time to sit once in a while with them in the evening and have a chat. You will be shocked at how much information you'll be able to put down. But we have neglected them, we've abandoned them. And these are trained hands. I keep saying it, trained. They only lack the strength by virtue of their age. That is one. Two, we should by now be able to avail some role to the traditional rulers. Okay? They can be of much use too, because a lot of information gets to them. These guys are still very much respected at the grassroots. That's why at times when you tamper with them, you see there is, let me say, an earthquake. We should give them a role. Make them feel important. Give them a sense of belonging. We shall be able to make good use of them. I know there are a few bad eggs amongst them, but I mean, let's face it. Nobody is perfect. And in what segment of the Nigerian society will you go that you will not find bad eggs? So that is no excuse. Give them a role and let them play.
I'd like to take you up on this, because I believe that the development of the North will do a lot for the general development of Nigeria and bring peace and prosperity. I want to ask the role culture has played and how can we start to change it? And I'm excited you talked about the Almajiri because the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, built a lot of schools for the Almajiri, but the schools were never used. And now we're beginning to see the problems as a result of the Almajiri and general poverty in the north, which I will not blame the current governors for, which date back to the 60s. When you check historical data, when you had primary school enrollment rate at 1.5 million in the south, in the north it was 250,000 naira, 250,000 people as at 1957. How can we change this culture?
Thank you. Talking about the Almajiris, if the present administration on its own decides not to continue from where Jonathan stopped, which of course was a novel idea anyway, what stopped the northern governors and general leadership up north, even besides the governors, coming together and approach the president to say, we are appealing. Let this thing please continue. I am asking this because if it were to be a particular grant, financial grant, that had been held up by the president, the entire northern governors will assemble in Abuja to ask for the release of that money. But it affects your own people. It affects the future of the north. When I look at Almajiris at times, I weep. I weep because I know what I am seeing. I am seeing a north that is sitting on a time bomb. I hope we have not forgotten that the leader of Boko Haram was an Almajiri. The system has been bastardized. It is no longer going the way it should be. The Muslims know that the Almajiri system itself is being bastardized. It could be corrected. These boys could be brought under very good learning conditions. For crying out loud, these are our own brothers, our tomorrow. Right now, counting, we have no less than 10 million Almajiris roaming the streets of the north. In another 5-10 years, that figure may have doubled because some of them would have moved into adulthood and, of course, get married and move on with the same mentality. Continue to have kids and abandoning them. When will the sensitization start? What is NOA doing about the situation of Almajiri up north? Is the NOA no longer an agency of government? Who is in charge of NOA? What is the role of NOA? Since Ghana, I've forgotten his other name, since Ghana left that organization, till today, yes, till today, we seldom know who is in charge at NOA. I think last week I got to know one Dr. Garba is here. I asked, is NOA still existing? And the fellow laughed. Unfortunately, it's still existing. So you mean actually we are paying the employees in NOA, including that Dr. Garba? Then something is wrong with us. We should move all those employees in NOA and redeploy them to NCDC as cleaners in our isolation centers. I think by then our money will have worth. The value of our money will be seen. Rather retaining them there as NOA and they are doing nothing and we're paying them salaries every month.
Colonel,
meanwhile, we lack cleaners in isolation centers.
Colonel, we have space for just one more question. And quickly, there's something you wrote, which I read, and it's good you brought up the issue of the veterans community. And in that piece, you were talking about the debarment allowance for the military. and you had asked the veterans community to challenge what is being done. Would you like to shed some light on that?
I would. The debarment allowance is an allowance that is meant for retiring soldiers. When I mean soldiers, I'm using that in a generic sense. Members of the armed forces who are retiring. And the essence of that allowance is to debar or prevent retirees from engaging the skills which they had acquired from their various services in the course of their service years, from using it against the Nigerian state. Of course, you all know what I mean by that. We are all good at arms, so that we don't go and get involved in armed robbery. We don't get recruited by Boko Haram and so on and so forth. In advanced countries, because it's an international phenomenon, it's an allowance that is paid all over. In the advanced countries, it becomes an alibi to be able to even prosecute service personnel who get involved in things like that. Here, we are just trying to begin to pay the allowance. And the statutory provision says all retirees. All retirees. There was no discriminatory tone in that. Neither was there a discriminatory intent in that statement. Now it is being implemented, and those who are implementing it, I'm cutting the whole long story short because we don't have time. Those who are implementing it have said, oh, they can only afford to pay from 2017 and ahead. The rest of us behind, what has happened to us? Is it that we don't have those skills to go out there and use against the state? Or is it that you have earmarked your group and make sure you benefit from it and run away? Enough explanations need to be done. We understand the amount involved is huge. All we need to do is to sit down and work out a modality of payment, maybe on a monthly basis. And within 1 or 2 years, you have finished paying everybody. Nobody is saying you should pay the whole money in 1 month. So I think a lot of thinking still has to go into that.
Wow.
But it is important that all parties and stakeholders accept to do a rethink on it, sit down, and work out some modality.
Wow.
Every
Thank you very much,
retiree is
Colonel.
entitled. It's a statutory provision.
Thank you. You've raised very pertinent questions. It's also about the fundamental rights of those veterans. Thank you very much for joining us on the Morning Show.